It's alright, my love. You can cry to me.
Good afternoon, La, to all the viewers out there, and for anybody who's new here to the Masterpeace family. We welcome you, La. Today, I don't know how to say this. This has been a very long time coming for me, La, as the creator and host of the Masterpeace podcast. For those who have been following the podcast and supporting, thank you so much, first of all. But for those of you, you know that I talk a lot about the Four Immeasurables in Buddhism and how those have become part of my personal guiding principles on my personal mental health journey. And so today I was actually able to curate this conversation on the Four Immeasurables, and it's just the greatest honor and opportunity. So I thank you, La. So today we have the Four Immeasurables research team. The Four Immeasurables is a collaborative action research undertaken by faculty members at the Paro College of Education, aimed at inculcating the four immeasurable qualities of loving kindness, which is Jampa, compassion, Ningje, empathetic joy, or Gawa, and equanimity, Tangyum, among future teachers as well as their teachers and lecturers at the Paro College of Education. This research highlights the transformative potential of contemplative pedagogy in nurturing ethical and compassionate educators. So we have here today to speak more on this. Three leading members of this incredible research team. We first have Dr. Kezang Sherab, who is currently serving as the Dean of Academic Affairs at the Royal Thimphu College here in Thimphu. And we also have Sir Kinzang Lhendup, Assistant Professor, and Ma'am Chimi Dema, Assistant Lecturer, who are both currently serving at the Paro College of Education. So on behalf of the Masterpeace podcast and family, welcome to Masterpeace, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
So let's get straight into it. How did this all start? As lecturers, as researchers, as academics, how did you get involved in this Four Immeasurables research? How did it come about?
Okay, maybe I'll try and answer this. Thank you, Tshering, first of all, for giving us this opportunity to respond to your question. I think I'll have to narrate a bit of my story. I have been in the education system for the last 30 years, with few years initially teaching in the school system, and then more than 27 years at Paro College of Education. And most of my life as a teacher educator at Paro College, I have spent researching, trying to understand our education system, starting from teaching learning processes to how we assess as teachers, student behavior, teacher behavior. And that is when I found out that there's something seriously going wrong, in terms of, for instance, recently one of my focus areas for the research was in terms of mental health, for the youth, which also includes other aspects, like substance abuse, bullying and discrimination. So through this research, I found out that there has been a lot of, for instance, bullying and discrimination happening in our school systems, not just in the school systems, even at the college level. So my research has been actually focused, in both school and university college systems. So this is where I found out that, a lot of this kind of things have been happening in our education system. Children are being bullied, not amongst their peers, but also bullied by the teachers, by the administrators. Then, it came to a realization. I realized that, something is wrong. We need to do something. And that is when of course, as a teacher educator, I don't have all the powers, in my hands to, bring a change in the system. But I thought, as an individual person at my own level, I could do something, And if our teachers are not doing right in the school, it points us. I mean, the issue actually is being raised in terms of how we train our teachers at the teacher training colleges. And being one of the members at the Paro College of Education, I thought that we need to do something, and that is how we started. And then actually it was more of explorative. I didn't have any idea how to proceed and what we could do. So I just had an idea that we need to do something. So that is when I started inviting my colleagues at the Paro College of Education to join me, in this collaborative action research. We thought that we need to do something at the teacher training college, where we train future teachers who will go into the school systems, and then these students, the youths in the schools, look up to their teachers. So we thought that that is the gateway, to do some corrections in terms of behavior, in terms of how we, small things like how we talk to our students, for instance. So I thought, then we decided, okay, when you talk of our behavior, teachers' behavior, how the manner, the way we talk, the way we deal with our students, then I realized, this something called Chimi, the Four Immeasurables came to my mind. And then let's do something, because Chimi, of course, is a profound thing in terms of religion. But I thought that we could do something very simple as to how to take care of the students, for instance. So I invited our colleagues, and then there was I was doubtful whether there would be any interested colleagues in the college, but it was quite overwhelming. I got a good number of responses. Initially, we had about 17 people who responded, and then of course few had to withdraw in between for some personal reasons, and that is how we finally 12 of us completed a couple of rounds of action research, trying to embody these four immeasurable qualities. And even before telling this or showing this to the students, we said that, okay, as teachers, as teacher educators who deal with future teachers in the college, we need to show some of these qualities in us. Are we showing that in the first place? And in fact, I've heard of many stories during my 27 plus years in the college, how the teacher educators react to the students, scold and punish for simple things. Like, for instance, even if a student is late by a few minutes, they will not allow this student to enter into the class. So this realizes how all this helps actually in the process. So that's how we started. Everybody agreed that, okay, we want to be in the team and we will do something. We will explore. Of course, we don't know anything about this. That's how we started.
I still remember that times, some 6 semesters ago, Dr. Kezang floating this idea, and I myself, coming from the contemplative education background, I also had the thirst to initiate something to bring about some transformation, at least within myself, if not for others. So I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to join the team and get into this experimental study.
It was in 2023. It was in 2023. Yeah. And in terms of the composition, I was really surprised actually. We had colleagues ranging from just 3 years experience teaching at the college to more than 30 years. It was a wide range of experience. The colleagues. So it was really good actually in terms of bringing this out. Yeah.
I came with nothing. I was quite intimidated with the idea of Chimi. I did hear about it before, but just coming to it with nothing is also very special in a way. So I learned quite a lot working with my colleagues on this research. It keeps on unfolding, and like every day is a new experience. So it has been very special for us to share this.
When Dr. Kezang suggested Tsemeji, at one point in time I was thinking, Tsemeji is too huge, meaning embodying such, qualities even spiritual masters are not able to achieve. I initially found it quite overwhelming, and then gradually I started realizing that as teachers, we could look at how this could be embodied at the level of teachers. So I felt that this perhaps is Tsemeji. These are prerequisite qualities for teachers, particularly Bhutanese teachers. So I, right from day one, I was quite excited about this, and my excitement continues. Although Dr. Kezang has moved away to RTC, Chimi and I, we are still passionately, working on this.
I personally consider Tsemeji in action. It's like
Practice over theory. So I just deeply appreciate everything that each of you shared. I think I should share with the audience that yes, I keep talking about the Four Immeasurables in the podcast with very, very limited understanding, but it's actually because of the Four Immeasurables team that I came across and first heard about the Four Immeasurables as well. And one reason that I was personally very excited, I think this was 2023 actually, when we met, when you launched this research. I was excited because I understood the Four Immeasurables to be Buddhist philosophy and teachings. But for me personally, I liked that it was coming from an group of educators as opposed to more like a spiritual or monastic background. And I have a very specific reason for this as well. It's because I feel that right now for me personally, religious or spiritual education is too advanced for me. I'm starting at so much of a lower level. So I really resonate with what you all share about it's a practice. It's more about being embodied. We should all have this. So the fact that you as educators in the education space, without really coming from any sort of a religious or spiritual background, what attracts me about that is that it's a little bit more manageable and accessible for a lay person like me, who I feel like I need to start from level 0. So that is something that really attracted me to not just the Four Immeasurables as a philosophy, but even what you all were doing in the first place. So before we get into the depths of your research and all your hard work, I think we should maybe zoom out a bit first, and I should ask you, what are the Four Immeasurables, the so-called Tsemeji or Brahma Viharas in Sanskrit, right? What is it for the audience? And I invite you to speak on, each one separately.
I think the word Tsemeji or the Four Immeasurables itself is indicative in the sense that this is boundless. These qualities are limitless and it's unconditional, meaning loving kindness and compassion can be generated to people you love or people you like. But then this Tsemeji is at much higher level, irrespective of who the other persons are, whether it's your own children or your parents or your friends or somebody or even those who you don't like. So this is a practice how we generate the the kindness with the same intensity irrespective of who they are. So that I believe is Tsemeji immeasurables. It's limitless, it's boundless, and it's unconditional. So that's what Tsemeji means to us. And we practiced embodying these qualities at our level of understanding the Tsemeji. So the first one, as you shared in the beginning, I think, is the loving kindness, followed by compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity. And of all these four qualities, equanimity is the basic, it's a root. And that's because without from a layman's perspective, if you look at equanimity as being fair, I think that's the prerequisite for other qualities. Because without that sense of being fair to everybody, irrespective of anything, then we will not be able to practice these other qualities.
This is the foundation.
Yeah, so it's so boundless or immeasurable in terms of, showing kindness to others, like for instance, right? I mean, being compassionate, not just to the human, colleagues or friends, but even to the other sentient beings. Showing, celebrating joy, not just when you are able to, do well or, succeed in life, but other people's, looking at others' happiness and joy. Yeah.
I see empathetic appreciative joy as how we celebrate all the perfections as well as imperfections. How when others could do, especially in our class, we embody in such a way that we also make sure that everyone is seen, all the efforts are seen, all the little things that they do in the classrooms are appreciated in their own ways. So little things like that matters a lot for students.
Yeah, I think we need to clarify this to our viewers that we are not experts in this field. We just gathered to explore ourselves and learn in the process actually. And then, in fact, one good thing that happened was amongst us there were also some Dzongkha, colleagues who teach Dzongkha and who are much more better exposed to Buddhist teachings, and they were able to help us actually. In fact, understand all this, and so in fact we are still learning, we are still exploring in terms of understanding these qualities. But nevertheless, we said, okay, let's try in our own small ways to, change ourselves first, so that we are able to, positively bring impact on our students who are the future teachers. And these future teachers, in the after graduating from the college, they're going to deal with thousands of students. And then we thought that, even if it is a small thing, that's how we.
So I just want to clarify for the audience here, I'll kind of repeat each of the four immeasurables, and please correct me if very superficial, but if it's the basic essence of each of the immeasurables. So the first one is loving kindness, which is Jampa, metta. And the traditional concept here is that it's boundless, unconditional sense of goodwill for oneself and all beings without exception. That's the unconditional bit, right? So then there's compassion, Nyingje, karuna, which is the heart's response to suffering, coupled with the deep desire to alleviate it. And so Nyingje is Jampa in action when faced with the suffering of another. Sympathetic joy or empathetic joy, or is it? It's both. Okay. Yeah, appreciative joy. So this was very interesting for me. It's Mudita, right? My sister's name is Gawa, and it's a very simple name, you think, and it's happy. It means happy, just to be joyful. Only after coming across the Four Immeasurables, I realized that I had a complete misunderstanding of this concept.
It's a little more than happy actually.
yeah.
Gawa is an antidote for jealousy. So it's more than being happy, it's about how we put ourselves into the other people's shoes and appreciate and enjoy the success that other people enjoy.
It speaks a lot to me that this kind of a joy takes up space at the same level of the other three immeasurables, which I find to be huge. The fact that this is the third one, that this is like in this spiritual tradition, this is at the same level as Jampa Nyingje and Tangyum, is like, it's very profound to me. And I started like contemplating on like how we live Gawa in our everyday lives, and I think a lot of us don't in this modern world. No, especially with social media, everybody puts their best life out there. There's so much competition, and somehow along the way there's this emergence of this culture of his success is my failure. But then joy, mudita, is the antidote to this. Like instead of like me feeling insecure and not enough because of your success, I take it more as an inspiration, and I celebrate and rejoice for you. Super profound for the times that we live in. So that's joy. And the last one is equanimity or Tangyum, upeka, which is balanced, calm, and unshakable mind in the face of life's, what I saw as the 8 worldly conditions. So in the face of pleasure and pain, praise and blame, gain and loss, fame and disrepute, you manage that stable mind. And that kind of stability also comes off to me as very profound. Before, I used to feel like it means that you don't even have emotions. Like, are you even human if you don't feel anything? But I'm starting to understand that it's not the absence of feeling, but it's that unshakable mind in response to the ups and downs of life's experiences. So, did I kind of capture the essence?
Well explained.
Yeah.
So, I think we have enough of a foundation, Nola. Could I request, can I invite you all to speak about the 3 major studies that you have done since?
Yeah, so with that excitement, we started, and then we agreed to meet on a weekly basis, to update ourselves, share our experiences, learn from each other. And one of the major overarching theme in our, trying to embody this was the role modeling of, whatever it is, as teachers, we, like, for instance, as teachers, we always tell our students to come to the class on time. But, you have never realized that you go to the class always late after the students. So what kind of role models are we? Simple things like this actually can make a profound impact on our students. And at the end of the semester, for instance, when we collected feedback, actually some of our students said that, oh, my lecture is on time. He's very particular, that kind of things. Yeah, I think that's what we experience. If Chimi and Kinzang would like to add.
Initially, we did not even have a concrete intervention ideas at all. So as Doctor mentioned, we decided to meet every Wednesday after lunch, and sometimes our discussions, went on beyond 4 p.m. past class hours. But we had very successful discussions, and we came up with so many intervention ideas. And it was actually on the very experimental level that we started, each of us were not bound by the same kind of interventions that we follow. We had our own ideas, we shared, and if I liked somebody's ideas, I started to implement that immediately. And that gave us an excitement, because then it was not some concrete somebody's ideas putting on me. I'm trying out some interventions that I like. So it was very open, and every Wednesday we also had we could share some of our success stories. That was even more encouraging to others. Yeah.
In my classrooms, what I did, I the idea of meditation, I did undergo a few sessions before, but I was not in a position to train others. I could not do that. But what I did, I started with a very simple exercise, like closing your eyes and starting with a sound, like meditation, listening to the sounds of the nature. And that really, in the beginning of the class, I started every class. And slowly, I gained confidence over time, like after we share, after we discuss, I gained confidence to start a few guided meditation with my students. And it's still going on right now. And every time I practice, I get more confidence. I get more confidence to share with my colleagues as well. So simple practices like that.
Yeah, so we started doing mindfulness practice was our regular
Yes.
sort of thing, and
Yes.
then emotional check-in. By the way, we should not forget to thank ELC. We visited ELC to learn from their practices, and around that time we came into contact with the Contentment Foundation. Your 4 pillars of well-being. I think it was really helpful,
Thank
and
you so much.
so we started doing things like this, and then taking care of small things like communication, how we talk to our students in the classroom, human dignity, respect, for every individual student in our classroom,
Yes.
whether it is in the classroom or outside, dealing with them. Then, as I mentioned, our overarching, goal was to be that sort of perfect, role model for our students. So there's this there's this term in the education system called hidden curriculum. So we wanted to focus on that and then bring that impact in our students, implicitly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I think ever since we started this, in my case, my mindfulness actually improved by many folds. I think that was the time when I was always conscious about I should walk into my classroom at least 2 to 3 minutes ahead of the time. And when we developed and agreed on the ground rules with my students, I made it very clear, and that really helped in the attendance and punctuality of the students. And that, and then prior to engaging into this action research, I used to be the kind of person who would easily get irritated. For example, if somebody walked in late, it would so much how I reacted would depend so much on my mood on that particular time. But I again became mindful because I was practicing this, and I had I could choose the words and expressions with full consciousness after I started practicing that. So that way, as Doctor mentioned, embodying those qualities ourselves first always came to my mind. And I'm not really saying that I had tried this and I have been able to achieve it. Quite often, it's very easy to fall back, slip into your usual mode. But then, it's the fact that we are doing this experiment actually gives me a good reminder. Oh, I should be doing that. I should try to model that. I shouldn't lose my temper. I shouldn't shout at them because I always have some choices I could make. So that's the kind of reminder that it comes automatically to me ever since we started this initiative.
So this was quite a transformative experience because we started exploring,
so
inner
personal.
self.
Yes.
We came to understand about ourselves more than before. Like for instance, as Kinzang sir mentioned, sometimes we don't realize, the way we speak to the students.
So clearly, this wasn't a mandate from like a higher level. you were this group of voluntary lecturers who decided to take this on. You recognized that there was an issue, and instead of uh, defensiveness or fear, you decided to respond with curiosity. What if something could be done with about this? Maybe the Four Immeasurables could help to ease this challenge within education. Like, you had all these questions. So the fact that you signed up, you volunteered, you kind of agreed to step out of your comfort zone to question yourself. Like, sir, you were saying, maybe I was irritable with my students. Maybe I could have better managed some of my emotions. So looking at some of your research papers from this project, some of the results of the findings are quite stark. They're quite glaring. Like in one of them, what was it that you found? It's quite clear that Bhutanese educators are struggling with, I guess in social emotional learning terms, modern terms, you would call it emotional intelligence or emotional literacy. But we can talk about the Four Immeasurables as well. But you found rising cruelty, sometimes insensitivity. Sir, you even mentioned cases of teachers kind of having bullying behaviors towards students. And we're talking about future teachers in the Paro College of Education. So they are going to go and probably continue what they have learned with the next generation. One thing that was really stark was that GNH values, Buddhist values, exist in at least the education spaces at a philosophical level, but are not embodied in daily interactions. And there were some findings that maybe the coldness or the lack of emotional availability, like the teacher gives off the energy of emotional unavailability, where the student does not necessarily feel safe to confide in the teacher, like, oh, probably this labor will just scold me or judge me. They will not understand me, so they don't feel safe to share or look for guidance. And it said that the students felt that this created like an environment of mistrust. So this is one of the kind of glaring findings of your studies, and I'm not sure actually, but I'm wondering if we have your permission to make your papers available for the general public. If anybody actually wants to read the findings of these studies, we can make them available. Yes.
Ultimately, this will be published. In fact, our action research, some aspect of it is already being published. So there's no issue in making it public.
So we will be making all these research papers available on our YouTube in the links section if you want to do a deep dive. So coming back to the question, you are lecturers, you are teachers, and there were findings in this research that, I don't want to use the word attack, but it was glaring commentary on your fraternity. How did that land for you all? How did you receive that? Obviously, working with you, knowing that you are continuing with the Four Immeasurables research, you're clearly so passionate. Obviously, I know you received it well, but what was that experience like? I'm very curious to hear.
Especially for me, finding out all this, in my research. In fact, to authenticate these findings, I visited myself, the classrooms where teachers, teaching, to observe the teaching learning processes, and in fact, this was quite surprising. We have in our system we have implemented GNH education since 2010, and I thought that our teachers would be, they would know how to deal with their students, speak to them. But also, having said that, I think I also realized that this is also largely to do with the system that we have developed. Our education system is so rigid, examination oriented, discipline oriented, So yeah, I think this is one of the main reasons why we have started this collaborative action research project. To make some small contributions in our own small ways. As I mentioned earlier, we are not policymakers. We don't have all the powers in our hands. But we thought that at least that small things that we do in our classroom, if there's some sort of multiplying effect, that might in the long run help to some extent.
Philosophy of cross-national happiness that we have adopted is so profound, and we proudly share this with the audience that the education ministry started implementing this educating for GNH since 2010. But the reality, as you can see in so many studies, is there is quite a mismatch between between the intention and the practice. While at the government level, I think it's very clear, that our students in the schools should enjoy learning, and the ambience therefore should be very, very good for children. But you see, at the implementation level, people have to take into consideration so many things, which is why this idea, which is so profound, is often overlooked. Like we take care so much of the physical aspects that we forget about not, taking an inward journey. We forget how we need to explore our inner terrain to see what we are thinking, to see what we want to speak. I think this aspect has been missing. Therefore, the little experiment that we are doing, we hope should be, copied, or other people could also venture into this. We are not territorial about this Semeji. Semeji, people could just try out one of the four immeasurables, or even at a higher level, some groups could even try out how they could do it in their own different ways. And I think we have come to a point in time where there's a genuine need for this transformation, inner transformation of both the educators and the children in the school.
So could you say a little more about what you shared right now about like how we tend to focus more on the physical aspects of GNH, but we don't do enough of the looking inwards?
Like if you look at the school ranking, for instance, which is some of the which are the main things that our school principals and teachers take into consideration. For example, the campus, the beautification of the campus, greening. It's so well maintained. Sometimes when you walk into a school campus, you feel like it's so good. But you walk into the classroom and you see the very traditional things happening, teachers shouting. I'm not generalizing that every teacher is doing that. We were also doing it not many years ago, and this exists in many classrooms. So while from the international perspectives, they are into thinking that Bhutan is doing something, educating for GNH. Children are happy, teachers are happy. But now they understand now why teachers are, leaving the system. So this is one of the reasons why, because teachers understand that they are not able to work within the kind of the framework that we should be creating. That's why they are moving out. So I think if everybody comes on board about inner transformation, I think Bhutan in 2035 can definitely become hub of education.
We're extracting that as a clip for TikTok. This line.
So yeah, I think when we say teachers, I think our audience should also understand that we are part of it. And I remember as a young teacher, I joined in 1994. I was quite aggressive. I used to, but yeah, I think we are not just blaming teachers in the field. We are part of it. I think that's why we wanted to, bring this change in ourselves first, and then see how it can bring impact into our future teachers. Yeah.
For me, my philosophy as a teacher, at first it was more content oriented, and later I realized something so profound, so deep within me. Like after I became a mother, I thought, what kind of teachers am I producing for my children and the future children, future generations of Bhutan? What am I doing something new or something different in the classroom? Am I catering to the well-being of my students so that they can cater to the well-being of their students? See the ripple effect that we create. And we are teacher educators. We have a big responsibility. The government, the leaders, our leaders are putting in so much effort to bring that treasure, that there of gross national happiness to the country. We're using that. But are we doing our part? That's a big question. It is our utmost responsibility as a citizen, as a teacher, especially a teacher educator, to bring that change within the transformation within, so that the transformation comes out, in their schools, their respective schools in the future. So that was like a huge transformation, a profound insight that I've built over time as well.
Yeah, so one of the motivations for this is also after having realized that, Bhutan is being looked after, as a GNH, everybody is watching us. They think that everything is perfect here.
Yes.
And then when such things happen in the classrooms with small children, it's quite actually disturbing. So that's one of the motivations. Yeah.
I understand these days that now there's more and more conversations that like it's coming from outside influences, and I guess the pathway that education globally is trying to take, moving forward, moving from like more punitive, more exams focused to more holistic, and like what the whole development of the child and all that. You hear things like child's rights and child protection policy, and like, yeah, that the child has agency. So there are these changes happening very fast globally that have suddenly come to Bhutan, and it's even faster here. So I feel like sometimes, we the background of our culture is that like the teaching profession is a really noble job, and we had this culture in like especially more rural areas, like the teacher is like a god, like a de facto leader of the community, because it's a profession that is so noble, and it truly is the fact that you impact the whole next generation. So I want to share for especially to teachers out there who might be watching this, to invite your curiosity and to encourage you to explore the papers that this incredible team has worked very hard on over the years. I understand that sometimes all the changes happening in education sometimes puts educators in a defensive space. Sometimes maybe we come up with policies to keep up with the world, like no corporal punishment, but sometimes there isn't a clear alternative to that, and essentially you're asking people to change an entire culture overnight. And when we are outside of the system, it's very easy to sit and judge. It's very easy to sit and judge, and that's why I think having like long form conversations like this can pick the nuances of that. So I asked you all as educators, how did it feel to get like very glaring criticism from the student body? And in each of your responses, I heard loving kindness, I heard the loving kindness in your responses that, okay, teachers could be a lot better, but it's not fully on them. There's many things outside of their control, like GNH sometimes getting stuck at the theory level and not moving down to practice. That's a society problem, not just a teacher or educator problem. Or that that they haven't been taught another way. And it's up to you to respond, okay, this issue is here. Am I going to get defensive and upset and resist this? Or do I embrace this change? And I use the Four Immeasurables to support me through that journey. So I hope that you all were able to practice that self-compassion, that same jampa towards yourself as well through this process. Were you? Because it's easier to extend to others, no la jampadi, than to yourself.
First of all, I think I should make this very clear that even those who are not into what we are doing are saying it with some sort of genuineness, in the sense that these people who are criticizing us perhaps are focusing so much on delivering the content because this is what they believe in. Teaching as much as possible with very good intention to help children gain knowledge and skills. But while at the same time, I feel that to exaggerate a bit would be like, doing this experiment was also like a roller coaster ride, because it wasn't a smooth sailing. We had in a very, good ambience, very nice, area. We have been criticized, made fun of, like by some people who, whom we never expected. For example, they even mocked at us for, they found it very, very funny to be, doing a research on this Chimi, which they thought was very spiritual. But I think we took this as an opportunity for us, because it's not just about practicing with students. It's also about how we handle this kind of criticism. And that made us prepare ourselves even more. And we had different responses to different people who came up with different, because we understood their level of, criticism. Some genuinely did not care what we were doing. We had different answers for that. Some did it with some, curiosity. We took more time to sit with them and, show them what we were doing. So I think our teachers currently, with so much of respect to what they're already doing, I mentioned a while ago about what they're trying to do, trying to cover the syllabus, trying to teach as much as possible. But what we are missing out when we do that is we are failing to build our children, mold our children to become good people, good human beings. Because content, these days is available anywhere, everywhere. In fact, if we give children enough time to explore, they may even be able to come up with much more information than we can do. But what is really important that the world is missing out today is, helping children grow into good human beings. I think this is the focus that we are trying to, bring to light.
So if I'm not mistaken, you asked about self-compassion, right?
Yes.
This is one thing that I've realized is very important, especially after having attended that session with the Contentment Foundation on drawing boundaries and letting go. I've experienced this with little bit of research experience. I've been involved in promoting research in the education system. I've been offering action research workshops to teachers, and other practitioners. And then I often get requests, I've done a research on this, can you read my paper and give some feedback? in fact, sometimes, it became quite overwhelming. I could not say no. I mean, I was that kind of person who always accepts, okay, no problem, please. Then I, landed up having piles of, assignments, to read and provide feedback. But after having, exposed to this concept, I learned how to say no in a good way, and then that really helped me in terms of my own well-being and feeling compassionate, inner for myself. Yeah.
And we did a lot of loving kindness for ourselves as well. Kinzang led different sessions about metta, loving kindness meditation.
Right?
We did a lot of loving kindness for ourselves. Just imagine yourself looking in the mirror and saying this out to yourself. May you be happy. May I be happy. May I be at peace. May I be healthy. And these were affirmations that we needed the most. And one core binding quality that we had was cooperation, and we had so much as a team. We were doing for the well-being of our students and well-being for us, and that really, we still have that shared philosophy with us, and I think it will continue and grow.
Tshering, just I would like to share a message to people who would like to try this out and experiment something in this line, to be aware of misplacing your compassion sometimes, particularly in the teaching environment. When we practice kindness and compassion, we should not be too considerate, too liberal, and be okay with whatever your students do. That's going to be misplaced compassion. We need to set boundaries. We need to set ground rules. Whatever is not right should be spelled out properly, and students should know. Otherwise, in the process of trying to do something good, trying to experiment something good, you will end up even spoiling your students. For example, they don't come to your class because you are not as rude as other teachers. Then it becomes a kind of what you call acceptable thing. And if you do that, then that's what's called misplaced compassion. So if you're experimenting this, be careful with this.
So what is the difference, Lhasa, between misplaced compassion and boundless compassion? So a general question I have about the four immeasurables is immeasurable. I think for most of us in modern society, living lay person lives, everyday lives, this digital world that we live in, I think, unfortunately, there is a cynicism. I'm included in this. I would love to believe that the four immeasurables are boundless. And as somebody who is really working on my own personal transformation, liberation, whatever, it's something I reflect on deeply. I believe that I just cannot fathom the boundlessness, the limitlessness of these four concepts, because I have not personally experienced it, and my practices have not been cultivated to that level where I can believe in it. And I'm somebody who's actually just even interested and curious and doing some efforts. What about those who are not even in that space at all? Most people will say, if you're too kind, it's weakness. You're just stupid. It's that association with weak. So you're a doormat. So you're complacent. If you're equanimous, so you're apathetic. You don't care. So there's this challenge of actually these are limited, and it's because the bulk of the population has not experienced these at higher levels because of the cynicism of the modern world, perhaps. So what is the difference, Lasser, between misplaced, not just compassion, but the others, and the actual boundlessness of these philosophies?
I think in modern day, the word kindness and compassion is quite loosely used, in the sense that you feel some kind of excitement today and you're ready to donate some 20, 30 thousand to a charity thing. And you see, but that really may be with good intention, but when you talk about compassion at the higher level, you should have the ultimate goal of uplifting the status of that group or individual. So I'm not talking about from the spiritual point of view. In the spiritual point of view, I think it's again very different, that nobody has given me the permission to talk about that, and it's beyond my conception. So compassion is not just about giving away when you're in good mood, or it's not about expressing your kindness at that particular moment, but it's about building a particular goal in mind with very good intention. For example, for a teacher, the loving kindness and the boundless compassion would be about what is the final product that you want to build out of that innocent little individual in the classroom. What do you want to? So at our college level, we look at not from the module point of view, but we look at from the point of the 4 years period within which how do we help these young minds to grow into responsible adults, contributing adults. So that is boundless compassion from a teacher's perspective.
So I'm hearing that you have to not just have or embody the concept, but you have to have the wisdom. I don't want to use spiritual terms, but I hear skillful means. You have to, it's not just about having the value, it's about putting it into practice, and it's how you put it into practice.
Yeah, for me, I think it is, I like this term mindful, in doing all this. So if you're mindful, you know the limit, you know where to, how far to go. So yeah, mindfulness, I always remember that.
So Chimi, you shared that time that for you, these are actions. Could you speak a little bit more to that?
Dr. Kezang mentioned about mindfulness. I really use that in my daily life as well. But I call that mindfulness in action as well. Whatever you do, you're embodying it, but at the same time, whatever you do it in the classroom, you are making sure that students embody that too. That's the next phase of the research that we're doing right now as well. So in action is, for instance, if I give you an example, like starting the class with the check-ins that we have done. We learned that from the well-being team at ELC, the wellness check-in, well-being check-in of students as well. So it's, you're just being there for the student, not just before you start the class. You're just making sure that you meet where your students are at, and looking at the ambience, the mood, how they are, and making sure that we acknowledge that. As simple as that. So that's the action part of me. You don't have to be it doesn't have to be huge like what you do, but simple mindful steps that you do it every day within your classroom. That's what I call mindfulness in action.
Yeah, I think talking about action, I remember this incident. People say that one of the best moment or place to practice this kind of qualities is on the road. I don't know how many of you in the audience you have blamed the car driver in the front of you. We have this interesting situation near our college. There is a bridge, and people have started calling this as an ego bridge. And you would see most of the time 2 cars in the middle of the bridge, not willing to back out.
Refusing to.
Yeah, I've experienced this myself.
Me too.
Yeah. And then before having exposed to this action research process, I would also be in
Not
the middle.
back up.
Yeah, but after that I have started backing up, and then giving side to the other car. Yeah.
So I think in the spirit of talking about how you have brought practices, small practices built upon the Four Immeasurables in response to some of the stark findings of like your research. I'm sure there are people in the audience who may be teachers, but who may just be like regular people as well. Could I please invite you to share what were some of those practices, and if you could explain how to do them? Like Chimi, you talked about the check-ins, like how do you do a check-in, and celebrating achievements. If you could list some simple free practices that anybody can do anywhere. Should I start with check-in?
So I have a very interesting approach. When I do check-in, I just don't ask, how are you today? Like, I used to do that, but I have started coming up with interesting ways of checking in with my students. So I give like a list of colors. From the list of colors, which color are you today? And we have a description of the colors as well. And then sometimes I choose animals. If you want to be an animal for the day, what kind of animal would you choose and why? Or once I went to an extent of choosing a fruit. If you want to choose a fruit, someone said, I want to be a mango today. You can be a mango, whatever you want, but just meeting the students where they are at. So that's the one thing that I always do with my students. Or you can just do indicators like, how are you feeling? Using your body. Do you feel like this? Are you okay? Or for today? So I just meet where like with the emotions.
Yeah, maybe before Chimi gets into the next one, I just wanted to add on to this emotional thing. So this is in the context of classroom setting where we work with students. But at the individual level, anybody can do that. It's basically trying to understand your emotion at that particular moment. Because most often we fail to understand that, and then we'll end up in problem.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't know that, I don't know that I'm angry inside.
Yeah.
And then I end up fighting with somebody, quarreling with somebody.
Taking it out on the bridge.
Yeah. So anybody can actually do this emotional check-in at the individual level, trying to understand your emotions so that you are able to, control manage it. And I think because of simple, that emotional thing, I have seen in Bhutan many cases of, people committing, all sorts of crime, serious blunder, even to the extent of murdering someone, killing someone, for simple reason, because you are not able to understand that emotion. So I've realized that understanding that emotion, is a very important thing.
I think this message should be passed on to our audience also, particularly those of you who are, on a daily basis interacting with people. You're in a service delivery. I think every once in a while you're able to meet somebody, you should check in yourself and see how you're feeling. I think that would be a good idea too.
And just to add on, like from my experience as a teacher, what I have realized, students don't know how to name emotions.
Yes, no vocabulary and no awareness.
No vocabulary at all. Sad, happy, I'm fine. Fine? What do you mean when you're fine?
And it's because it wasn't modeled for them.
Am I physically well? Am I emotionally well?
Yes.
I'm feeling well. But I don't understand when you say well. What does it mean? And I have realized like they don't have the vocabulary, and we need to build that vocabulary for our younger.
I would like to ask about the meditation, mindfulness. There are so many mindfulness practices, and oh my God, I won't even pretend like I've like I can, understand what I'm talking about as well. But I did see in the paper that shamatha was the particular approach that you're taking. And I believe shamatha meditation is the specific technique that's around like gaining control of your attention. So I would like to invite you to speak more on that, La.
I wouldn't claim to be a meditation master, but I had the opportunities to learn from many spiritual masters, including during the 2 years, master's contemplative education master's course in Colorado, and
At Naropa.
Naropa, yeah, and even for contemplative, for shamatha meditation, I just so that students are not bored. I tried several types, such as focusing on breathing, focusing on objects, visualizing your, deity, and even backward counting. And over the period towards the end of every semester, my guidance for the meditation would be on choosing their favorite ones. Most of my students found that backward counting was less distracting. I think they had to look at, that after 49 comes 48, not 50, because it's very automatic that we count forward, but counting backward is a little difficult. So students found that less distracting as compared to other forms of meditation. But having said that, many of the types that we practice in the beginning of the semester, they did that actually. And I think the most important thing about meditation is about being able to be in the moment, and that's again it's like a parroting. It sounds like parroting because despite the fact that I've been doing this for many years, still I find it so difficult to claim that I'm able to come to the present moment myself. What this really does is for our students, the young, very energetic, most of them, instead of walking casually to the classroom, are actually running to be on time. So when they do that, they are totally, distracted, because they're coming from the play field. And this is true for school students as well. So sitting there for about 2 to 3 minutes and trying to, calm down actually helps in, bringing themselves emotionally into the classroom rather than being just physically there. So immediately after this shamatha meditation, looking at the individual's stability, I also do that aspiration setting, meaning for the next 2 hours, how am I going to make the most of the time that I'm going to spend with my friends and my tutor who is in front of us. So initial aspiration setting also helps students to increase their attention span. So this is what I had been practicing.
Yeah, I found trying to learn and practice this, found being in the present and being non-judgmental really helps for me actually. Yeah.
Oh, we tried this. I tried this gratitude, and I literally had no idea how to go about. And then I thought maybe the first thing that comes in our mind when we talk about gratitude is our parents. And for many of our students, it's not both the parents. For some, it's mothers. For some, very few, it's fathers. So we said, you really need to choose between the one, father or mother, or if you think that both you owe equally to both your parents, yes, you can do that. And some even, some were not even choosing their parents. For some, the most the favorite person was grandmother. For some of them, it was their uncle. So based on that, I said, okay, towards the end of the week, towards Thursday or Friday, we said, okay, this weekend we are going to do something. Call out, do a video call of your favorite person. It could be your mother, it could be your father, or grandmother, anybody. So then I told him to tell them that this year we are doing something very different. In addition to learning action research, we are also learning how to become good human beings and good individuals. And you center your discussion around that subject and critically observe your favorite person. And after the weekend, when we got back to your classes, I intentionally spent about half an hour. I didn't really care that action research content was not being dealt there. It didn't really matter for me. So it was about transformation that I wanted, So I gave them. Initially I said any 3 people can, volunteer. Immediately there was a hand up, and I said, and it was the boy started talking about his father. He said it was the first time that he was, sharing about his emotion to his father. He started presenting, and then after a few minutes, he started, he broke down. We had a very difficult time bringing him back to the discussion. And the whole of the session, actually, I wasn't able to take the class that day. Then another girl stood up. She had very, very interesting conversation with her mother. And then we also had very funny incidents sometimes, in some cases, saying, because it was quite unnatural for that mother to hear those from her daughter who never spoke at that level, who never shared about her emotions. It was so interesting, and we also had some very, very negative experiences during that weekend. They were not able to connect despite the time they took to connect with their favorite person. So that was really interesting, practicing gratitude,
which is underlined with emotional vulnerability and being present, stepping out of your comfort zone to maybe change the dynamics of your relationship with your family member you've known for your whole life, but in a different context. And no wonder the mother said that. She must have been so taken aback by that.
I did a little differently.
Yeah.
What I asked my students, I said, just say thank you. Just thank your parents for bringing them up, educating them, and for doing everything that they could. And we had a heart well-being circle. We cried a lot of. Then I said it's okay to be vulnerable, and they were very hesitant to share. And when they saw their friends sharing, they got motivated to share. And one particular girl, she said, "I've never thanked my parents, I never did that." And there was another student who shared, "I did this and my parents immediately called because they thought something's wrong." What is she up to? What is she up to today, right? And yeah, when we shared, the emotional vulnerability came up, and we shared that space. We shared emotions, and for that, in that particular moment, I thought, this is what I'm doing. Like, this is what I want to be, a teacher who is emotionally available for my students.
It's all about creating safe space.
Safe
right?
space,
For everybody
yes.
to share.
Yes.
learn.
I like when they saw me broke down as a teacher.
You demonstrated your humanity, because it's like, oh, teacher, then you are limited by the label. Then that distance is also created, but you demonstrated that, and they saw that, oh, ma'am is human also, which again sounds so funny, but it happens a lot actually.
Yeah, I think it's really very important to express actually our gratitude, thanks to our parents. We take it for granted in our Bhutanese culture. I think we don't even have expressions such as "I love you," you know, and which is very crudely translated "Ngagi Chiluga." It sounds very awkward if you want to say that to your dad or
But
mom.
also, isn't that like just I like you, like Ganigi?
Ga is it? Yeah.
Yeah. I asked that once, is there a word for love? And my friend was like, it's Ngachigadi bear. This is not there. But I'm curious, lah. So you talked about the importance of safe spaces, the importance of emotional vulnerability. Now, one blockage from the culture, and this is not just Bhutanese culture or traditional culture, I think we're talking about world culture when we talk about how males are not allowed to experience emotions the way that females do. Males are more judged more harshly if you do express any sort of emotional vulnerability, because males have to be tough and all that. So one challenge, even for me personally as an SEL trainer or as the promoter of a mental health podcast, is like this mental health thing or SEL is so that they can get together and cry. They just talk about their feelings and cry, and it's like it's very dismissive, because I think it's very triggering for people who are not ready to face their own emotions. But for me, it was empowering, because by learning about emotions, getting a vocabulary, I realized that, oh, I am not the only one who experiences loss, shame. I'm not the only one who feels like a failure, like I'm left behind in life. So when I feel like a failure, emotional intelligence has helped to increase my resilience, because I'm like, I'm not the only one who fails. All humans fail. This is my failure. It hurts, but I will bounce back from it, because I know that there is nothing wrong with me, that I feel shame, which is a low sense of self-worth, or I failed, because I simply got this knowledge. Whereas I find that, especially with young people, whenever you hear a story of these youth dying by suicide, a lot of the stories are like permanent decisions made on temporary emotions. And oftentimes they couldn't talk to anyone, and they couldn't overcome the sense of unworthiness. There's nothing to look forward to. So I think this is especially for the two sirs, as males, as males in leadership positions, where so many younger generations looking up to you. Have you gone through this kind of maybe a little bit of like commentary or criticism that
Of course. But while we're on the emotions, I would like to share also a little bit about not exactly about how Daniel Goleman talks about emotional intelligence, but from another perspectives, where I think this is a practice where if we could teach our students to do that, when we experience an emotion, I think we need to learn to literally look at the emotion, dissect it, and allow it to exist, and then see how we do this exercise again and again until such time when we begin to feel embarrassed about experiencing that emotion. For example, you're experiencing anger. Instead of trying to calm yourself down, telling yourself not to get angry, it doesn't work actually. What you really need to do is look at anger and try to dissect that anger from the perspectives of its origin. And even look at whether there is a genuine need to, add more fuel to the emotion that you are experiencing. So when you try and dissect it to the extent that, it really, literally disperses, scatters, and then you no longer experience that. It takes time. You learn that in contemplative education. It takes time, but it works. It's not about, it's maybe from the SEL point of view, sharing with somebody definitely lessens the intensity of the anger. But if you look at it from the perspective that I was sharing, you can, look at it, dissect it. In fact, anger, emotions such as anger, which we consider very negative, is in fact a very powerful emotion that can be channeled into the right direction. And then that will help us achieve something within much shorter time than we otherwise could have done. So emotions are something we can handle, differently.
So what is your response, La, that because sometimes in society males think that emotions are for females only, but it's human to have emotions, but males have a harder time accepting their emotions, especially when they are the ones that are not encouraged, like the shame, failure, inferiority, which you will feel along with pride, I feel like a provider, or all of that.
Our culture actually does so much harm by saying that men are not supposed to cry, men are not supposed to show this kind of sadness, something. I think with that kind of belief, men become like pressure cooker. Over the period you build so much of pressure in it, and then eventually when it bursts, it's going to be very catastrophic. Yeah, I definitely experienced that right from my childhood about being a boy, being men, having to be stronger. I think some not good practices should be discontinued, even no matter how much we value our culture.
One of my research findings actually has shown that I think this is actually coming back to the term resilience. I think I did research amongst the college youths, and then close to 20% and more females actually consider themselves to be not resilient. So I think that is the starting point also in a way, right? I mean, not considering yourself as resilient and falling prey to small things, small situations.
Doctor, is this the paper that presents the two comparative findings from the two national surveys?
Yes.
One was done in 2016, the other one in 2023. So a 7-year age gap with more than 4,500 Bhutanese college students. So thank you so much for bringing that up, La Doctor, because looks like we have about half an hour more to wrap up this conversation, and I feel like this research of doctors, again, the results were very stark. So this comparative analysis of these two national surveys across these 4,500 Bhutanese students in Bhutanese colleges found high levels of psychological distress among that population. And what do we mean by distress? They feel nervous, they feel hopeless, restless. Everything feels like an effort most or all of the time, and female students report higher levels of distress. Suicidality is a critical concern. So 16.6% of those 4,500 reported suicidal ideation over their entire lives. This is so shocking. And 5.4% had attempted. And one thing that was heartbreaking was that the 2023 rates were higher than the 2016 rates, which means it's gotten worse. I saw resilience deficit, 55%, so that's more than half literally, don't see themselves as being resilient, and they report that they have a very hard time bouncing back from stress and setbacks. So that's exactly what I was saying about how I personally built my resilience just because I got the knowledge, basic knowledge around emotions. But they don't have that, there's shame around that, and then they can't bounce back. And the final thing was the declining optimism and brain drain. Maybe 36% see their future in Bhutan, but more than half of them, 53.6%, see their futures as being both in Bhutan and abroad. And doctor, I was personally like, what's wrong with that? We're in a globalized world. What's wrong with that? If you, like for me, myself, I work in Bhutan, but like I have a lot of international colleagues. I work with organizations abroad. I travel. So it's like, I do have my foot in both worlds. And I was like, so what's wrong with that? And then you said it indicates a crisis of belonging and optimism. And then I was like, okay, because I understand that in this globalized world, if you don't feel rooted, you can belong to the world, but you also belong nowhere. And belonging is one of the foundational needs of humans as social creatures. To, like, if I belong somewhere, then I have this sense of self-worth, things, this sense of authenticity, things like that. So can I invite Doctor and or even Chimi and Kinzang, if you have comments on this, about this generational tension. What is happening with these young people? what is happening? Why are things getting worse? We understand that they're the digital generation. You don't even have to have left Bhutan to be influenced by global culture because you have your smartphone. But why is that a bad thing? What's going on here? Sorry, my questions are all over the place. Like the results were just so shocking.
Yes, it's really concerning. And so talking about this group, we are talking about the cohort which belongs to digital natives, highly vulnerable to mental health, because of all these things happening, the global influences, and so I don't know what to say, but there has to be definitely some proactive, measures being taken. And in fact, in Bhutan, our Ministry of Health has already declared that mental health is the sixth killer disease in Bhutan. And it's just growing, actually. We hear about suicide every now and then. While doing this, this research, I found out from the literature that in order to address some of these issues, the youth issues, there has to be empowerment, agency. There's this term called, the youth wants them to be in the driver's seat. I like that term, actually. In terms of designing policy, in terms of
for themselves.
They want this to be inclusive, not led by adults, which is what is happening in our country. In fact, everything, the policy is designed by adults. The programs are designed by adults, which now I think we need to realize that youth actually do not like that. They want to take a lead role. They want to be empowered, and they're aware that the mental health is there. They're vulnerable to mental health because of all this exposure. So we whether it is in the school or whether it is in the university or whether it is in the society, I think it's high time that we consider some of these approaches. Being more coming up with more youth, inclusive and youth-friendly infrastructure, that kind of things. Yeah.
No, it's such a difficult question.
Yeah.
Towards the end of this,
Yeah, I mean, this is just based on my research. Where I mean, two of them were not involved, so
yeah,
I mean,
I think this particularly COVID hit us very hard. It affected our economy so much so that, in a way, if you look at the current exodus, it's good actually. Our youths moving out because they are meaningfully employed there. Whatever they're doing there doesn't. I mean, you shouldn't care so much because to begin with, that's something they can do, and they are bringing in revenue to Bhutan, and of course we are experiencing fake economy, but then at the time I think this is the best if we keep them without engaging them meaningfully, meaning giving them proper jobs that they would like to do. I think then we are calling for a crisis actually. Now, even without the government's intervention, individual families are taking initiative. And while they are outside Bhutan, they're able to pursue their tertiary education. And in a way, they're building the kind of skills and expertise that GMC would require in future. So, the GMC that we are talking about in future, it's going to be huge. Even look at the 2029 when the airport would have been fully functional by 2029. We would need many folds of youths to be working in that airport. Not just the Bhutanese youths, wherever they are, even if all of them come back, we wouldn't have enough staff to man the people in the GMC airport. Forget about it. We have 7 economic clusters. And if you look at each of these, we definitely see that there's a huge opportunity for our youths, who can come back and work. So in a way, I often would like to think differently, and I think it's a good thing that our youths are going out and our kids are getting tertiary education there. Many of the courses which are not here in the Royal University of Bhutan and KGUMS. So while youths at the temporary level, I think yes, we are losing health professionals. There's a huge vacuum created here. Educationists, teachers who have been in the system, who have huge experiences, have also moved out. If you look at it from the very momentary perspective, I think it's right that there's every reason that we need to worry about. But in the long run, this is good.
So to address some of these issues, we have started a very interesting project at RTC called Reimagining Student Success, grounded on Four Immeasurables.
Oh.
So yeah.
So it's the same project at RTC.
Yeah. So we want to. So we know that youths are facing these challenges, and then now what can we do as as a college to support them? Finish their colleges successfully. So we are doing a series of things to support our first year students. Because often first years face serious issues in terms of navigating the university life. So I thought that these 4 immeasurables might help them.
Absolutely, love. Absolutely. I absolutely agree with so what you're saying, that people should go out, they should experience, they should build their skill sets, because if we take this approach of we need to stop people from leaving, it's it's like that effort to like stop an idea whose time has come, and you can't do that no matter how hard you try. So I guess what I'm pointing to is like when I was growing up, when I was in school, my teachers used to talk about a globalizing world. I mean, I'm not that old, but I'm not a youth either. I'm definitely not a youth. So even like during my time, we were already going through that, where they would talk about a globalizing world and how you have to navigate like your national identity, like the identity of your homeland, the land where you have your formative experiences, whatever. So it's the students who go abroad. I think in our case, it's the children of the people in Australia, or people who go very young. So one of the reasons, like sources of my personal mental health issues or challenges, is a sense of belonging. And that sense of belonging was deeply impacted by, I went to boarding school when I was 11. And in my time, it was a little bit more rare, but now you don't even have to leave the country to feel like, I don't like the food, I prefer pasta and burgers or whatever. You don't even have to leave the country. So my point is, how do we bridge that gap? Like, it's important that I deeply want to be rooted in my Bhutanese-ness. I want to be a proud Bhutanese. I want to know about my own cultures, and I want to be rooted. This is part of the effort that I'm making. At the same time, I don't want to just know about Bhutan. We need to participate in the world. We need to be competitive. So we need to be globalized. So sometimes I find that part of that generational tension is not this and global. But sometimes it comes at as if it's a competition, like you have to choose either you're Bhutanese or you're not. And I find that this is one of the tensions that would be alleviated by four immeasurable virtues and philosophies.
True. I think, that generational, generational that tension that our youths are undergoing. I'm pretty sure that this will help them, because it is all about being mindful, controlling your emotions, using digital media mindfully, because one of the things that our youth will have to be careful is what they see on the social media, the idealized, the lifestyle that is portrayed. They need to understand that everything on the other side is not green. Right?
It's not all
they
perfect.
need to, so that they are able to balance to some extent.
Yes.
To share a little bit about my experience, almost all my friends are out. Like, I did go through a crisis. Personal, should I leave too? Discussed with my parents. He's laughing because he knows. So, but what is my purpose? I really had to. It was a challenging time that I went through, and like Sir mentioned, Dr. Kinzang mentioned, the Four Immeasurables stood the ground, and I knew what I was doing, and for whom I was doing. I had my purpose in my mind, and to be an educator in Bhutan, to uplift the students, to create that sense of belongingness. And I think it starts early in the classrooms, to create that conducive environment. Are we creating an avenue for them to share the emotion, to really make them feel like an individual who belongs? And I feel that is the responsibility of a teacher. And for us, it is our responsibility to create the educators who would do that for the youths, for the future. And in line to that, Dr. Kezang and I, we also did the advocacy program for bullying and discrimination. We created few videos for the youths, for the general audience, that we could share as well. And we have seen starking reminders, like we need to do something now, or it will be like right now we think it's a crisis, but just imagine the future. It's going to be worse if we don't do it now. And I feel that for Immeasurables, it is going to be an essential tool for the teachers to integrate that into their classrooms.
So the Four Immeasurables, in a way, is a uniquely, I guess you could argue Himalayan, but we're in Bhutan, so we're going to say it's a uniquely Bhutanese approach to this problem and to these problems. And in all the research that you all have done, whether it was with the team or whether it was doctor's separate research, the results are, yes, it's shocking. But part of the reason why I was shocked, as somebody who was not involved and just as a consumer, as a receiver of these results, was that in Bhutan, like that was one thing that kept coming, because all these things, like people are comparing themselves more, they are less resilient, the generational I mean, it's kind of global crisis of belonging, loneliness. This is not unique to Bhutan, these issues among the youth. But one thing that was like screaming in my mind when I was going through this data was, in Bhutan, really? So just as the Four Immeasurables are a unique Bhutanese response to these global issues, my question is, what is unique in this situation about Bhutan? What is unique about these results specific to Bhutan? Although this is like a common global thing, is there anything that there's Bhutanese factors around why we're seeing these kinds of results, especially because we're the land of GNH and the land of the Four Immeasurables?
I don't know. Maybe my surface level perspective observation would be, I think starting from the school system, I feel that our system is so rigid that can provoke that kind of things. Anything that we do has to be so much, discipline oriented, harsh discipline oriented. The differences, the layers that we have created, hierarchy. I think these are mostly, I would probably say that, not proudly, but I'm confident to say that these are more of Bhutanese in nature, which may not be relevant to other contexts.
Yes. So we have these GNH and Four Immeasurables values imbued in us as Bhutanese, but then it's a part of this result is the impact of the systemic impact of a rigid education system. Thank you. Sir, ma'am, you guys have no comments?
So, after having successfully implemented this collaborative action research at Paro College for the 2 semesters, we extended to more faculty members. And then we had another 12 or 13 members who joined the group, and the group became 24. I think it went up to 24. And then ever since I left the Paro College, I handed over the responsibility to 2 of them, and they're working on it. Yes.
On the membership, I think we kept this very open. Some people chose to stay out last semester because they were bogged down with, module writing responsibility, which is huge. Each individual was entrusted, with the task to complete writing a module. And most of our members from Dzongkha in particular, and few from other BEd programs who are into writing modules have taken a break this last semester.
I do have a comment actually about how we see children, how we see an individual. Here, it's extreme. We in early childhood terms, we say we have images of people or images of children in our head. Whether we go to traditional, they're innocent, they don't know nothing, or they're miniature adults, or whether we look at them from the point of view as those who have agency, as individual rights, those who are curious. If we think of them as curious, we're going to create curious individuals, innovators. And when we think of them from that point of view, I think our outlook, our perspectives, our practices, the strategies that we use in the classrooms it will change. It will change how we think of them and what kind of people are we.
General perception, no? Like, the alume, alugasheni, say, no? That, I think that kind of perception actually must be influencing.
That's true. If you want to create thinkers or contributors to the nation, we have to look at them as contributors.
So you're saying there's no equanimity or balance in our perception of children, and based on that, it's how we impose on them. So they either don't know anything, that you give them zero agency, or they're miniature adults that you expect them to know as much as you, when they're not even fully developed as fully functional adults, and that there should be more balance in that. I actually had like a question around resilience building, or based on each of the four pillars, the four immeasurables, in really trying to highlight the practice aspect, moving beyond the theory. So I could ask that as the final questions, but like, I want to create the space. Do you all have any questions or comments, or do you want to speak directly to the audience as we wrap up? Like, is there anything that you want to say that you feel that this platform is the right space to do so? I want to honor that.
I think dissemination is very important. Whatever little thing that we are doing, we need to share this to the wider audience, not to show off that we are doing something very different, but because we believe in it, believe so much into it. If we did this, and I also would like to believe that there are so many teachers out there in the field, in the schools, and faculty members in the Royal University of Bhutan who would like to try this out. And I thought disseminating this and sharing whatever little things that we are doing can actually encourage them as well. Because with so much of confidence, I can say that this is definitely making an impact. For the first time in my life, I felt so satisfied having tried this out. Not just because the feedback that we received were wonderful. Yes, in fact, it was wonderful. I think I should mention that as well. Never in my entire career I got this kind of feedback. And the Dean Academic Affairs called me and asked me, what are you guys doing, with this initiative? That the feedback has been very different over the years, ever since you started this. And we shared about, I shared about what we were doing, and then he asked me, would you be willing to take some of our faculty members on board? I said, I do not have the absolute authority to handpick, but we definitely, float to our faculty members whether they would like to join us. So we did that. We sent out an email asking if they would like to join. And yes, there were other people. That's how we got more the second time. And then at a very personal level with the dean, we took on board some of the people that he wanted us to take on board, so that the transformation happens with them as well. So I thought that was very encouraging, appreciating in a different way, while at the same time not, talking about the, some things not good. So this actually is very, very fulfilling, in the sense that I have begun to have so much confidence in what I'm doing. And I also have so much confidence in the amount of the impact that I have been able to create in the minds of my students. Today, because of this, my students know that I genuinely care for them, and they also know that I am a very approachable person. I'm very punctual. So these qualities have actually helped them develop a different image of what I actually am, what I used to be before. So if you want, generally, particularly for teachers in the schools, if you try this out, as I was saying in the beginning, you can definitely make so much of impact on the students that you're teaching, and your students will have, even if you can transform just one individual out of the so many that you are teaching, I mean, the impact is immense. It's one human being, not just a child. So this is the message that I would like to pass on.
That's so wonderful. Thank you so much, Lassa.
Yeah, we would like to thank Madam Tshering, in fact, for creating such space, considering the current, situation, everything is digital, lots of social media. I'm sure this kind of platform will provide more reach. We publish our work, but there will hardly any readers. I think,
in their defense, that's the state of academic papers in general.
Yeah.
But
So,
it's incredible.
Definitely,
to have
I think
found.
this platform is really,
Thank you so much, Lassa.
we should continue doing this good work.
I'm so sorry to cut in, but I would like to say, I'm so grateful that there is Bhutanese literature. Because for so long, we in Bhutan were living in the culture where foreigners were telling our stories. It was always like international experts, doing analysis on a culture that they're not even from. So when it's our own people telling our own stories, that is such a priceless contribution to the memories that we create of our nation as we move into the future. So thank you so much on behalf of everyone for this contribution, a very immeasurable contribution.
This is just a start. Compared to my colleagues, I'm very new to teaching, just 8+ years of teaching, and this is still a beginning for me. And we need more people with us, more people to transform lives of students in our country. We need more collaborators, teachers, our faculty members. We need more thinkers. We need more people to contribute to the body of knowledge, the limited body of knowledge that we have. And we hope that we grow as a group and we can disseminate this knowledge to many audience. And like Sir Kinzang said, it's truly transformative within it's the intrinsic motivation and the motivation that you get as a teacher. It's overwhelming at times. Yeah. And I'm so proud to be a part of this team, to Dr. Kezang and Sir Kinzang and Tshering for giving us this platform to share. And I hope that we get more people in, more teachers.
Two of us will be retiring soon. The ball is in your court.
It's a huge responsibility.
I wish that we had done this way back in the early 90s when I first became the teacher. But even towards the end, I'm glad that we took into, ventured into this, and I'm sure Chimi and the colleagues there at the college will do everything they can to take this forward.
Thank you so much, love. Sir, what you shared right now, I wish we did this long time ago. It reminds me of that quote, which is, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And with that, I want to build on another quote, which is a Bhutanese one, which I don't know. So please remind me. I know the English translation, which is the thing about sadhanamyaza, something like that. When your intention is clear, can you please say it?
Sampazang, sadhan lamyangzang, meaning
Sampazang.
if your intention is good, everything will become miraculous, transformative.
And I think that beautiful saying, which includes the earth and sky will clear its paths for you. I feel that that is embodied by you all, how you show up, how you live the Four Immeasurables, how you deal with criticism and setbacks. And I really want to rejoice and send out the sympathetic joy towards all of you La, and all the efforts that you're making. I think it's an incredible contribution to the nation and for the future generations. La. Thank you so much. La. So we will wrap up now, and I have one final message for the audience, you guys, if it's okay. I'll wrap it up. Pressure. I want to bring it back to the 4 pillars, and once again, La Four Immeasurables team, please correct me if I'm wrong. But for the audience, which is largely younger generation in the largest numbers, and they're not really educators. There's some educators, but they're like lay people. So I want to offer to them 4 simple practices that they can do to bring the 4 immeasurables into their daily life, connecting it back to the concept. La. So for the viewer here, this is one way that you can practice loving kindness or jampa every day in your life. We talk about theory to practice in this conversation, right? The importance of practice taking a larger role than just knowing the philosophy of these 4 immeasurables. So this is one way you can take your theory to practice. As Bhutanese, we pray for the happiness of all sentient beings, but do we extend that same genuine warmth to that colleague who annoys us, that cousin who you try to avoid at family gatherings, or the driver who cuts us off at Ego Bridge? Are they not deserving of your jampa? So jampa, remember that jampa or loving kindness is the practice of making that prayer that may all beings be well, making it real in our daily interactions, something that all of us can do. The second one, compassion or ningje. Theory to practice again. We see suffering and we may feel pity, but compassion requires courageous engagement. Instead of just saying, this is samsara or this is karma, when we encounter some sort of suffering, we can fall into the trap of complacency because this is karma. But can you remember that ningje or compassion asks, what is my role in easing this suffering right now? So that is compassion, which is jampa or loving kindness in action. The third one, sympathetic joy or gawa, theory to practice. In a small society, gossip and what we call tall poppy syndrome, which is cutting down the tall ones that rise up. We also call it crabs in the barrel. When one crab is getting out of the barrel, we pull them down because we're not happy that they're getting out of it. We're not happy that the poppy is taller. We want to bring them down to our level. So we have this tendency towards gossip and jealousy. Gawa is the conscious practice of rejoicing in your neighbor's new car, even if you feel like they didn't deserve to get it. Your cousin's promotion, who you feel didn't deserve it. A friend's good fortune, and seeing it as a proof that happiness is possible for all. So this is also the abundance or growth mindset, which is a practice you can bring to your everyday life to experience more joy and well-being overall. And the final, and maybe the most profound one, theory to practice equanimity or tangyom. We all understand, especially in Bhutan, that impermanence, we understand it intellectually. We know that we're all going to die and nothing lasts forever. But how do we practice it in our everyday life? How do we practice how limited we are? When a project fails or when you receive criticism, when we receive criticism for this episode, which we know there's going to be a lot coming, instead of spiraling into self-doubt or anger, can we learn to say, this is a difficult moment, but it too will pass, and respond from a space of balance and profound stability, unshakable wellness in the face of a very unstable and unpredictable world. So the 4 immeasurables, this ancient wisdom, brings priceless potential to bring more light into our daily lives in this modern world. And we hope that you enjoyed this episode. but that more importantly, you can take some things from it that will help to improve your mental health and your self-management and the quality of your daily life. So on behalf of the Masterpiece and the Four Immeasurables team, thank you all so much, and take care.